Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Richard Pepe. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. The title of this video, Italian Catholicism and Matteo Salvini will recenter the EU, emphasizes Italian Catholicism. That's the first item. It's not Matteo Salvini. Matteo Salvini is tagging along a structure, a reality, a social reality that plays in Europe. I assume that England is going to leave the EU, that Brexit is going to finally take place, and that England will continue to play a part, but not as important a part as it's played. I think that's better for England. I think it's better for the EU. Let's talk a little bit about the EU, what it is, and how it came to be, and basically what social realities are behind the EU. The EU grew out of the structure, the agreement, the Treaty of Rome. That's important. And the most important part of that initial treaty was to cement relations between France and Germany so we wouldn't have a replay of World War I and World War II. We all recognize that. And Germany has been by far the most important economic player in the economic community. No question about that. If you look at the, I'm going to have some notes. I made some notes that I want to touch on during this video. You see the population realities that make up the EU. There are approximately 500 million people in the EU, about 82 million are in Germany, 67 million are in France. Italy is next with 60 million, Poland 38 million, Spain 46 million, and UK 66 million. Well, if you remove the British economy from the EU, the next biggest is France, then Italy, then Spain, then Poland. All of these are Catholic countries. Now, Austria is also an important Germanic and Catholic country, but it's 8 million people. And Germany and France are forces that basically are in accord with the globalists in the United States and with Britain. If Britain walks away from the EU, the forces of nationalism and Catholicism are going to strengthen in Northern Italy. And that's what we see beginning to happen. From the perspective of Northern Europe, Italians are corrupt, funny looking, and not serious. But from the perspective of Eastern and Southern Europe, Northern Europeans, the Germans, are basically disliked. So the ability of Germany to define what the EU is going to be in terms of immigration policies and nationalism is going to be dramatically decreased if Britain leaves. Now, I'm not Catholic, and if any Catholics watch this, I want to know if they feel that I've been unfair or insulting, and I would appreciate any comments anyone would want to make. But the Catholic Church is not going to go away in Europe. If you're under 40 you have lived through years where you have been told two things that aren't true. The first thing that isn't true is that we are in a post-industrial, post-Christian age. We are not in a post-Christian age. Christianity still has an enormous ethnic reality and an ethnic social potency. And we see that in Russia specifically when, as I've mentioned in another podcast or video, that Putin has overseen the creation of thousands of churches. And as I said in that video, the Russian Orthodox religion did not go away when communism arrived. The Russian religion is carried by the Russian Orthodox religion is carried by the Russian women. What happened in thousands and thousands of Russian villages, peasant villages, is women got married, had babies, and went outside with their aunts, their mothers, and so forth, and baptized the babies themselves. And when the pressures of communism receded, the reality of Christianity came back. It was bound to happen. The same thing is true in Europe. There is a very interesting study, and I'm going to cite it here. Does Religion Still Matter? Religion and Public Attitude Towards Integration in Europe by Brent Nelson, James Guth, and Brian Highsmith. It was a 2010 report, Religion and Politics section of the American Political Science Association. Now, let me summarize what they found relative to religion and their attitudes towards European integration, which would not surprise anybody. We ran an analysis for 6 groups of countries: the EU 9, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. The accession 6, these came in afterwards: Greece, Portugal, Spain, Austria, Finland, and Sweden. The accessions 2004, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, and Poland. And the candidates 2006, Croatia, Bulgaria. So what they did is they took all the countries in Europe and basically tried to see how they felt depending on when they entered with their peers into the Union. And what they found wouldn't surprise anybody. Page 13, 14. Religion still matters, but the impact varies by country group. In the EU 9, the historic core of the EU, which would include Italy, of course, Germany, England, and so forth, Catholics support the EU. Committed Catholics are even more approved. Protestants, on the other hand, are less positive. Religion works differently in the accession 6, where all 3 Christian confessional cultures are represented, with Catholics dominating the Iberian Peninsula, which would be Spain, Portugal. In Austria, Protestants, the northern states, and the Orthodox Greece. Here, neither Catholic variable has any significant relations to attitudes towards the EU, but Protestant identity and Protestant commitment have very solid negative influences. Now, with a very large Protestant and important power out of the EU, the Catholic identity is bound to strengthen. And I think that's a good thing, because I think the 2 things that Europe is going to have to solve is immigration and relations with Russia. And I think that further Europe, the Catholic Europe, can develop space between itself and Britain, which is to say, develop space between itself and the United States and Britain, who basically are one on this anti-Russian kick. The better it is for everybody. What we see is now is a Russian anti-Russian hysteria that is dangerous. Putin, as I've said, has in other videos, has indicated that if there's an attack on Russia from nuclear weapons that are located in Europe, namely, I think Poland and Romania, the two states where he's most concerned. He's not going to just attack Poland and Romania. He claims he has a missile that will travel at Mach 9, can be set off from a nuclear sub, which will be located about 250, 300 miles off the American coast. We see what this means, that basically the engineering has become so good. A Mach 9 missile means roughly 7,000 miles an hour. So we've all heard of the importance of the development of the hotline after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, that hotline is not going to be of any use if we have an accident and we've got a missile coming in at 7,000 miles an hour from 250 miles away. I mean, it's going to be 6 minutes and everybody's going to be dead. You don't even have time to pick up the phone. It is spectacularly dangerous, and it's self-defeating. So I think Matteo, Poland, Hungary, Spain, if their influence increases, I think that Europe as a whole will have a more moderate effect towards Russia than the way the situation is today, where basically Germany and Britain are dominating the discussion. So a better situation, a better relationship with Russia is one of the hopes I have if Brexit occurs. The other issue is immigration. And I want to show you this chart that I've shown before in my videos, but it tells you the importance of what's coming in the next century. This chart, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's titled Figure 3. The African population is forecast to go to 4 times its size in the next 100 years. The source is the United Nations as of July 2013. And it identifies population growth by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas. Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, North America. These 3 lines down here are basically Europe, South America, North America. As you can see, they project basically no increase, maybe a little decrease between the year 2010 and the year 2100. Asia, as we all know, has the 2 largest countries by population, India and China. This is 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion. So they project that there'll be a slight increase from about 4 billion in 2010 to about 5 billion in the middle of the century, 2050, and then a decrease back to about 4 billion in 2100. Basically, all of the increase in population is going to come from Africa. In 2010, the African population was about 1 billion. It's going to go to almost 4 billion. Now, there have been studies done to determine how Africans would like to live, where they would like to live. And these studies are absolutely terrifying if you're a European, because something like 40% would like to move to Europe. When Europe cannot absorb this kind of population, so somebody has to take what can only be considered a firm position. And this is the second of the bromides that have been promulgated to young people that isn't true. Biden is wrong. Immigration can be controlled, and Salvini has shown it can be controlled. Let me look at my notes here. In October 2016, 27,000 people arrived in Italy. As of October 2018, only about 1,000 arrived. If you're determined, the executive branch is determined to control migration, it can be done. My own bias, I think the United States needs a wall. And I voted for Trump, and I voted for Trump basically because I think he wanted to have better relations with Russia, which I think is the most important part of a nuclear age. But I also think it's reasonable to build a wall. I don't think that, however, a wall is absolutely necessary. I think that if there's enough determination on the parts of the border agents, migration can be slowed to a reasonable trickle. This is what is disturbing, however, about the Democratic Party. One gets the sense, although they say they're in favor of an intelligent border controls, they think that a wall is immoral. Well, I don't think it's immoral, and I don't see why they would think it's immoral. To me, the most moral way to control migration is to tell the migrants, don't get on a train in Mexico or south of Mexico and think you can get through the border, because it's dangerous traveling on that train. We've all seen pictures of hundreds and maybe thousands of people packed on top of a train. They fall, break their legs, so forth, or suffer going through the desert and so forth. If the most moral position is to put up a border that would prohibit the attempt to cross the border, cross the line between the United States and Mexico. Now, this is not unique to me, this feeling that basically if Britain gets out, there's a better chance that Europe will be able to control its borders, and Europe will be a kind of a mitigating force between the globalists and the anti-Russian fanatics and the neocons in the US and Britain, and that's a good thing. Now, I came across and it was odd that I was thinking about this, and I realized I'm not the only one thinking along these lines. There's an article in the, what was it? Spectator, 2/28/19, by Louise Mensch. It's time to delay Brexit. And she sees it exactly the reverse from me, in the sense that she wants England to stay in the EU because she thinks, as I think, that she's anti-Russian. So Britain is an anti-Russian force because Britain underlines and reinforces the proclivities of the neocons and the anti-Russian fanatics in the U.S. And she's an anti-Russian fanatic. She writes well, she's good-looking and intelligent, but she wants to put the Russians in their place. Well, Russia has some legitimate interests, and some of those legitimate interests are also religious interests themselves. As I said, Russia has a Russian Orthodox history. It's going to reinforce and protect the Russian Orthodox populations in its surrounding areas, and it's got a right to do that. What it did in the Crimea, I think is understandable. The Russians have been creating the resources, the developments in the Crimea for 500 years. To think that when Ukraine left because they had a line on a map, excuse me, that Russia was going to let the Crimea leave is preposterous. We're in an ethnic world. And the great thing about Salvini and Italian Catholicism is that they can buttress and support this reality without getting sideways with Russia. As I say, I'm not Catholic and I don't want to be offensive. But there's a real affection between Catholics and Italians for the Catholic Church, as there is in Spain, Poland, and so forth. And I think that Italy can play a role, a very important role, because I think that the other Catholic countries will basically support what Salvini wants to do, which is to buttress and support Italian Catholicism inside Italy, which I think is an understandable nationalistic impulse. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it.